Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I see participants are rolling in, so we should get started right away and get into our topic of our latest biometric update webinar. Will deepfakes deep six biometrics? Generative AI has opened up a new front in the battle against fraud, raising the question of whether biometrics will continue to be a trusted method of protecting digital onboarding and authentication from fraud, or if the growing availability and sophistication of deepfakes will outpace our ability to detect them. This webinar will explore the threat from multiple angles and how technologies, including different AI, are rising to meet this challenge. We're going to attempt to broaden the discussion around fraud beyond just a discussion of the moment in which onboarding or authentication occurs. This is generally the time when we associate with presentation attacks, also injection attacks, and therefore the presentation attack detection, liveness, and other measures that are used to thwart fraud. But there is a little bit more to the picture than that. So we're going to look at also the moments in the process when identity data is created. So you can think at this point of entering data into a form. You could think of an attack, say, in the form of a photo, which is morphed to create a fraudulent identity document. There's also the threats to data when it is at rest. Data that's stored on the server side could be subject to hacks or data breaches, which then fuel further attacks. On the individual side, we have attacks like phishing, which likewise generate or free that data for use by attackers. So this all plays into the threat of generative AI, and we're going to try and cover a lot of bases here today. So we are fortunate on that front to have with us Francis Zelazny, CEO and co-founder of Anonybit, which provides a decentralized framework for privacy preserving storage of data, which could be biometrics or other sensitive data. So thank you very much for joining us, Francis.
Thank you.
And we also have with us today Alexei Kitrov of ID-R&D, which of course develops algorithms for biometric matching, liveness detection, etc. Thank you for joining us today, Alexei.
Hello, Chris. Thank you so much.
We're very fortunate to have these two experts with us, and I just want to quickly call out that Francis just recently wrote an excellent piece on the relationship between generative AI and identity theft on LinkedIn, which we will throw up in the chat as we go along here. And on that note, I just want to touch on a couple of quick housekeeping items. We do have the chat enabled, so by all means, feel free to interact with each other, leave your comments. We may end up sharing some resources in that space as we go along, as they're raised. We're also going to work towards a question and answer period at the end. So please use the Q&A function, which you'll find towards the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can enter questions there, and we will see how much time we have left at the end and try and get to as many as possible. You will also all who are attending today receive a follow-up email so that you can play back this webinar afterwards, go through your favorite parts, take your notes, etc. So thank you for joining us today. And on that note, let's dive right in and ask the question at hand. Do generative AI and deepfakes indeed threaten the viability of biometrics for identity verification? Alexei, what do you think?
Well, It's a great question, and we're starting to get this question a lot in our conversations with customers and with market practitioners. And there are two good, there are two news that two pieces of news that we can discuss here. So good news and bad news. So let's start with the bad news. So the bad news is that deepfakes are good, and they're only getting better. So we've all seen the picture of a pope in a puffy shirt, and we all had our fun, looking at it and trying to spot the deepfake there. But this is only the beginning. Our expectations that the quality of the deepfake, the quality of the images that are coming out, or the Gen AI type of software, will only be increasing in time. Moreover, what we're seeing is that the images that were generated through Gen AI are already being used by the bad guys in order to penetrate the systems, in order to commit fraud. So the threat is real. The threat is out there. We recently did a poll at ID&D, and what we find out that 42% of businesses or their customers have encountered deepfake attacks already. So 42%, that's an incredibly high number. And 37 reported that they were exposed to injection attacks. And we'll talk a little bit more about what does injection attacks do, and what do they represent, and why are they important specifically in the context of deepfakes and Gen AI. There's been some other interesting data points coming from various reports and blogs that we've seen that cover both the threat coming through the images and coming through the through the voice channel. VMware reported that 2 out of 3 respondents in their report saw malicious deepfakes used as part of an attack. So again, a very high number, and it's growing. And I think it is very important that we pay attention to it. So the bad news, it's real and it's happening. The good news is that as with any type of new attack vectors that we're seeing, the biometric industry, as any other security function, is already developing and already has some very sophisticated products and means that mitigate that risk, and that is the good news that I think that we should all remember from this webinar and from this conversation, that we do have some specific technologies and capabilities that can address this particular threat, and we'll talk about this, I think, later during this webinar.
Absolutely, and just to pile onto the bad news a little bit there, it just occurs to me as you're describing the poll results that those poll results are attacks that the customers or businesses have observed. So in theory, there may be even more that they haven't seen. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think we're very early in this journey, and I think that a lot of the attacks are not yet been reported. So so expect more bad news coming from the field.
Perfect. So what do you agree with that assessment, Francis? What's your take on this?
I don't know if I should pile on the bad news, but I don't know if everybody's aware, but just a couple of days ago, there's some tool called Fraud GPT that was launched, and for a subscription of just $200 a month, you could use this tool to write malicious code, draft phishing emails, create malware, and all other kinds of bad stuff. And according to the media reports about this, there have been already 3,000 confirmed sales and reviews of this tool. And what makes this so dangerous is that you have these tools now that can take stolen data we know all about. So combine that tool with the headlines of data breaches. Every day, it's another breach. So combine the data breaches and the data leaks with more and more sophisticated tools and deepfakes, and you have a really dangerous recipe for disaster. And I'm just going to pile it on more. But there's good news at the end, of course. What makes it, I would say, this recipe even more potent is that we as enterprises, the way we're managing identity today is pretty broken. We have a lot of disjointed processes and gaps that attackers exploit. We're kind of making it easy for them. Their tools are getting better, but we're actually leaving many doors open. So for example, the amount of entities that are not connecting digital onboarding to authentication and account recovery leaves many blind spots for the organization. So you can try to inject a deep fake, you can try to use stolen data in one aspect of the life cycle. Maybe you catch it there, but you won't catch it in the next place because your processes are not integrated, not unified, not connected. And this is, at the end of the day, what attackers are exploiting. So just to sum up what I'm saying is that there's three legs of the stool. One of them is the deep fakes and the injection. The other is the data breaches and the stolen information. And the third is, and related to that, the fact that we allow the use of this information for authentication. And then the third leg of the stool is the disjointed nature of identity management today within the enterprise that needs to be addressed.
So it's a grim picture, particularly with the scaling threat, as you mentioned, with the tools becoming more available. So basically, fraudsters have a lot of different potential targets within the identity life cycle. Their tools are very sophisticated, and those tools are proliferating. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, what you'll hear me say repeatedly is that these threats, all of these three legs of the stool, none of these things are new to the world of biometrics, and none of these things are new to the world of fraud fighting. The question is whether we have the resolve to actually use those tools properly and not piecemeal in order to really solve the problem. And I think that's really the challenge to everybody listening and to the stakeholders at large, is that we can do it. We have the technologies and the tools, but now we got to take action.
All right, well, and we are going to talk a fair bit about what those tools are and how they can help. But let's get a little further into the threats. What are the specific threats that we're talking about here? Alexei, can you put some meat on those bones for us, please?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the identity world, there are two key processes that are being exposed to the Gen AI deepfake based fraud and attacks. One is the onboarding and KYC process. That's when people are opening up new accounts and need to present some type of documentation, go through a biometric check, and that's where we see a growing threat, a growing trend of use of stolen identities, using face morphing to attach a biometric features of one face on the other face, and the creation of the large amount of so-called synthetic identities, which means that these are the brand new fake identities that are coming up and based on kind of non-existent people. The other threat that we're seeing, and it is very specific to the identity world, and that's the account takeover threat. When people when the bad guys are using increasingly sophisticated tools and in imagery and in various type of injections to get access to the existing accounts, again through the use of this new capabilities.
A fairly wide range of malicious possibilities there. And Francis, do you have more threats to add to the list?
So I think, as I said, the theme is connecting these deepfakes and and to kind of backtrack where and how do the threats that Lexi was talking about, where do they originate? And the truth is they originate in the data breaches. So according to the Identity Theft Research Center, last year there were 422 million breach victims. They just posted that this year it's on track to even exceed that. You look at other threats, and the use of that, really, it's like you can connect the dots very easily between a data breach and then subsequent account takeover attacks. I think there's a lag of like 6 to 9 weeks between the time of the original data breach until the data gets posted, filtered, and then you start getting all of the reports of the fraud related to that breach. So it's very, very well, the patterns and the trends are well established. So the question is, how do you stem the tide? We look at ATO, account takeover attacks, 90% up. You look at phishing, smishing, all these different attack vectors, no matter who, Liminal says 7 times, other people say 8 times, but the trends are all in the same, in the same direction. But it all boils down to data breaches, PII that is being compromised, and then again, us allowing the use of that data for authentication instead of other tools.
Right. And when you give your account takeover example, I think it's probably very easy for all of us, who are not technically skilled in fraud and fraud prevention to understand how that would work with data breaches. But can you just add a little detail about how data breaches can be used as fuel for some of these other kind of attacks, like the synthetic identities that Alexi mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So synthetic fraud in particular is typically a combination of fake information and real information, such that the points of the real information are sufficient to bypass any of the controls. As I said, a lot of this is really our fault, like the way we're doing KYC, the way we do identity management. But if you look at the way background or KYC happens today, is that you have multiple sources of data, and as long as you can check the box on those different sources at any point, then you can pass. The question is, what are those sources that are being checked, and whether there are velocity checks being done to see that it's the repeatable sources that repeatable data that is coming through, right? We know, like with mules, or even with a lot of these synthetic accounts, they establish a credit, they do what they need to do, and then they throw it away. But there are many, many signals in addition that can be used. Another example is, and this is kind of this false sense of security sometimes, is that when we have a passwordless authentication system, we're like, okay, like no more passwords, like we're good. But then you allow the person to call the call center and they revert back to things like your mother's maiden name, your favorite color, what street you grew up on, and so on and so forth. And so as long as you have that, and that data, I read a statistic that what's interesting, 50% of the time the fraudsters know the right answer because they bought them, but also 30% of the time the right people don't know the right answer because they forgot. So
We've
but
all
since
been
we're
there.
talking about fraudsters, let's focus on the 50%. So that means that that data, we are allowing the use of stolen data for authentication, essentially for authentication purposes. And if you combine that with the other stuff that Alexi was talking about, you create a really difficult environment for fraud fighting.
Absolutely. So let's turn to the audience, our attendees at this point. We'd like to run a poll and ask all of you about your experiences with this problem and get a bit of a handle on how widespread and how common it is. So you should all see now the 3 poll questions we have just put up. Is the threat of generative AI on the radar of your company and or customers? Are your customers' accounts properly protected from deepfakes? And is the management of biometric data and PII currently an important concern for your company and or customers? So if all of you watching at home or in the office would like to take a few minutes and just have a quick think and click yes or no, we'll share what those results are. Francis, what do you expect to see here? Is this something that is happening more than people realize, maybe, as we were discussing earlier, or are we going to see that this is top of mind already? What do you think?
I think this is very top of mind. Just the number of registrants that we got for this webinar today, I think speaks for itself. There's nobody that I'm not talking to that is not looking at generative AI. I mean, either there are good aspects, bad aspects, transformative aspects, scary aspects. And I think that there are a lot of companies that are now like thinking about generative AI, not only from the fraud perspective, but there's also this aspect of what information do I, like if I want to take advantage of generative AI for my company, that means I need to feed it. If I feed it, then I'm feeding into like, public, more public availability of maybe my intellectual property or my thinking or my data or privacy. So I think that this is, you pose the question and from a context of threat, but I think that it's more than just threat. It's like there are opportunities associated with it, but how do you balance the threat versus the opportunity? And I would love to see what people respond on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alexi, are you hearing a lot the same thing? Is this coming up a lot in your conversations with clients?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the important themes that we're seeing lately. I think majority of the people that we're talking to are concerned about it, or already faced these new attack vectors. So my expectation that majority of participants in this call would be in a similar boat and already experienced that or thinking about it. And I think that's the right approach. It's definitely an attack vector that must be addressed, because if you're not addressing it, then you're exposing your organization, your customers, and your customers' data. And this is the last place that you want to be in these days. So so my expectation is that we will see the results that people know about it, people concerned about, and people are looking for ways to address this issue.
All right, well, let's see. I think that's been sufficient time for everyone to have an opportunity to answer. So can we see the results of that poll? Yeah, so let's just have a brief moment to go over these. I guess number one, Is it on the radar? The answer is yes, more or less. Very few responses in the negative there. A little bit different when it comes to whether accounts and customers are currently properly protected, which I think is probably something that we would see as a positive sign. Would you say, Francis?
Yeah, I think that this reflects, it reflects the headlines, it reflects the threats. And I guess the first step is admitting that, we have a problem. And so I look forward to the discussion around the solution. I really do believe that all three topics are very much connected and related and have to be addressed holistically. Because if we just look at one aspect, it's like, okay, we may solve a technology problem, but it may not really address a systemic problem across the enterprise. And so it's not enough to just separate each of these. They're very much connected.
Right, absolutely. Otherwise, you kind of end up in a whack-a-mole game, right?
Exactly.
And Alexi, I just want to get your quick take on the 37% who say that their customers and accounts are properly protected. Would you have word of caution for those people, or do you think that some enterprises, some businesses are getting a hold of this issue?
I think that that the attack vectors that we're discussing here are evolving, and they're evolving very quickly. So I would caution these people to make sure that they're up to date on the on the security protocols and all the products and services they're using to protect themselves, their customers, their data from these type of attacks. And the capabilities that we're seeing in the Gen AI, in the large model world are expanding very, very quickly. So just make sure that you're up to date. That's my main advice here.
Absolutely. So I mean, so we can see that this is clearly a major problem. What Alexi's saying, you may have been fine last week and not so much today, right? I think that's one of the themes that's kind of emerging already here. So on that note, let's get to how we address this issue. Alexi, what can we do here? You and Francis have each alluded to the fact that there are some tools we can use. What are they, and how can they help?
Absolutely. So let's start with the process of biometrics and the way that the biometrics can be protected specifically for the face and voice modalities, because that's the area where ID R&D operates and where we build a significant AI expertise. There are essentially two ways to address this problem, and in both are possible, and they're in the various tools and in ways to use them. One is to try to distinguish an AI generated object, being it face or a picture, being a video, being it an audio, with the voice from a genuine sample. So is this a picture of a person, or is this a Gen AI generated picture of a person? There are a number of tools, and there are a number of kind of software and services that are available right now that run these type of analysis. And New York Times recently did a very interesting study where they were tested, I think, 5 or 6 tools that specialize specifically on differentiating Gen AI generated images from the actual photos of people and objects. And I would encourage you to find that article. It's a very interesting study. They looked at the number of various conditions, situations. The conclusion is that the tools showed some level of confidence in some situations, but not in all. And if the quality of the imagery or of the images is below ideal, that's where it kind of all goes to the kind of haywire, and the reliability of this type of analysis is not necessarily high. Kind of goes close to the coin flip. So so these tools are available, but they are trying to identify the artifacts of Gen AI, and they're playing in this whack-a-mole game that you just mentioned, because the number of new software tools, the new services that allow you to create new imagery, that allow you to take a creative license to generate these images, it is increasing very quickly. The leaders in the space, they are they're releasing new versions each and every day, and to make sure that your models are covering this huge variability of sources of these images, it's a very difficult proposition. And these type of solutions, in my mind, would be always chasing the technology that keeps on running away from them. Does that mean that they're useless from security analysis? No, they're not. They can be used, but I think that our position that should be used in combination with other tools that we're using. The second way to prevent Gen AI-based objects, again, voices or pictures or videos, from being used in an identity stream, is to prevent presentation of those images into this identity stream. So one way to do it is to present them to the camera. So let's say you're asked to do a selfie, and instead of presenting your face, the bad guy would present a screen or printout of a picture of a person that's been generated through the means of the Gen AI. And that's where the presentation attack detection or liveness capabilities come into play, because what we've seen is that the liveness capabilities that exist in the market, and IT R&D played a significant role in this marketplace, been very effective in distinguishing between a person, from an image, from a video, from a person on the screen, from the person on the piece of paper. And for this type of analysis, it is irrelevant whether an image on the picture is a picture of an actual person, or is it a Gen AI. It is a picture. It is a flat surface, and it's got the other artifacts of a picture versus an actual person being in front of the camera. So a lot of the attempts to use Gen AI generated images can be stopped through the means of presentation attack detection or liveness. There's also and so that's the presentation threat. There's also we're seeing an increasing growth in so-called injection attacks. That's where the biometric data is in motion, essentially, when it's being transferred from the point of capture to the point where this data is being processed, typically on the server during the KYC process, or elsewhere for the biometric purposes. And there are some very interesting solutions that we'll talk a little bit later in the webinar that help to address this issue. And then, of course, there's the biometric data that rests, that's in storage. And I think Francis got a few ideas on how to address that threat.
Absolutely. So yeah, Francis, so let's turn the same question over to you. How do we address this threat?
So I would say that there's five elements that I outlined in my blog for anybody who wants to get into greater detail. But there's really 5 elements. 2 Alexi already talked about: the liveness detection, the injection detection. So I'll talk about 3 others. First of all, eliminating centralized honeypots of personal data. There's a whole new class of technologies that are called privacy enhancing technologies. these could include multi-party computation, zero knowledge proofs. There's others, and these technologies are emerging. They're designed to protect biometrics, but not only biometrics. They can generally support any kind of personal data, any template, any image, any token, document, and so on and so forth. And I would say this is quickly becoming table stakes for many enterprises, because there's a recognition that in order to create a unified identity management journey, there needs to be a storage capability for all of this data, so that you can then leverage it across the enterprise. It's actually surprising how many enterprises do not connect their onboarding processes to downstream authentication because of the fear of data storage and data management. So that's really number one. Once you've solved the storage problem through these privacy preserving techniques, then the next thing is to leverage the data, particularly biometric data, across the user journey. So if you are capturing a selfie or a voice recording in the onboarding journey, that should be used persistently and consistently across the rest of the interactions. So we shouldn't have a situation where you have a very, very strong onboarding capability, the best KYC, the best synthetic checks, the best liveness detection, injection detection, all of that. And then have, okay, create a username and password to access your account. Or you have all of this great stuff going on up front, and then, like I said before, call the call center to reset your account, give me your mother's maiden name and your favorite color. Even for the FIDO enthusiasts out there, restoring and managing the passkeys. How do you link the passkey to the actual person that you onboarded? These are all questions around unifying the journey and making sure that you have a persistent factor that is really the biometric. That's the only connection to the actual person across the board. And then the third one, so the third thing that I'll talk about is adaptive. We can't always, as much as security people want to make it difficult every single time and have like a very, very high security, and the truth is it's really not practical to constantly ask people every single time for multiple factors to be presented. The user journey and the user experience is really, really important for a whole variety of reasons. And so by including adaptive techniques, which look at passive factors, you can enhance the user journey without compromising on security. And so there should be this combination all the time of using all kinds of signals, along with the ability to step up to a very strong factor, not to your mother's maiden name, but a very strong factor. And together, these things with what the three things I mentioned, with the two things that Alexi mentioned, together will create a very, very strong method of defense. And I'll just bring it back to what I said originally. It's really up to us because the tools are there.
But we need to use those tools to enable the correct architecture, it sounds like, is one of the missing elements in auth.
Absolutely. Unifying the user journey. Right. There's a new term now, integrated identity platforms. But that's really what it's about, like incorporating the right technology into a comprehensive and unified system design.
Absolutely. And we've definitely seen a trend towards that orchestration as a product, as a platform to help organizations with that. So yeah, so it's incumbent on and anyone who's concerned about their systems, as you say, to make use of those tools. But we've been talking a little bit about injection attacks along the way here, and I do think that most of us in this discussion, listening or participating, are more or less familiar with presentation attacks and presentation attack detection. Therefore, but injection attacks have kind of become a prominent topic more recently, and I think are less familiar. So, Alexei, can you just maybe give us a quick view on what the difference is and how that works?
Absolutely. And I think if you don't mind, I would like to share my screen and show a quick video that shows the ease with which the bad guys can use what we call the injection attack techniques to penetrate the onboarding process, and it goes across all sorts of verticals, dating, banking, healthcare. For various type of AI applications. So this is how injection attack looks like in real life. This is how the deepfakes are being injected and put into the identity stream or onboarding streams right now. So the good news is that there's solutions that exist right now that stop and identify this type of injection attacks, and typically these solutions combine both some of the elements of AI-based analysis of the images and the objects that are being used in the stream, so we can identify where this image is coming from, how it's been processed, and that provides a wealth of information. There are also specific references to and specific software protection that prevent certain functionalities within the apps and identity flows that help us to prevent the scenarios that I just showed from happening. And that gives us a pretty solid protection from both the presentation attack detection that happens essentially in front of the camera, where we can distinguish between a person and an image, a person and a video, the person and something that happens on the screen, and then injection attack detection when the deepfake generated images is being inserted into the identity stream. So we can build the software and AI-based protection against those key capabilities. And what's important, and I think Francis touched on that theme, and I think it's quite a big one, is that it is very important that in order to bring those protections, in order to make sure that this attack vector is not successful, we are not changing the user experience for worse, that we're not making it more complicated, we're not adding new steps into already complicated flow that is being used right now for the processes like onboarding and KYC. And because the analysis that we're providing for the presentation attack detection, for injection attack detection, it's all done in a passive way. It has essentially zero UX. It means that the tools that are available to the enterprise right now can address this issue, and can address this issue in a way that is not negative, that does not play a negative effect towards the user experience for the consumer.
Right. So there are tools out there, but again, it's that question of how you put them into place. And I mean, when we were talking about this a little bit in preparation, and we were talking about injection attacks being newer, and then Francis, you made the point that the concept is not actually new. This specific attack vector may be more common now and so on, but there's actually it actually reflects a long-time problem in cybersecurity. So how would you explain that?
Yeah, so in the world of fraud prevention, there are a host of known threats, malware, emulators, remote access attacks, all kinds of bots, all kinds of threats that have been known for a long time, mostly not used with in combination with biometrics. I think this is the new thing, that you would take a biometric and inject it, but it's a recognizable playbook for anybody in the fraud prevention world. There are many companies and technologies that were developed to identify these threats specifically. And there are other related ones around behaviors and all kinds of elements that can be used in combination. I think that's what's important here, is that you need to be looking at multiple aspects at once and not just piecemeal, because you may have, it may not be an emulator. The threat may be from another vector. It could be a malware, or it could be, again, like some kind of an account takeover with a presentation combined with stolen information. So it's really important to utilize a variety of different signals, and not to think that it's like one and done, or there's like one silver bullet that's going to handle every scenario.
You have to just cover all the bases, even though there are several.
But we can. We can.
So that there's the encouraging counter note to our earlier discussion about the threats. Now we're starting to run short on time, so I just want to run really quickly through a couple of items that we'd identified as being part of this picture as well. So Alexi, what about documents? They're part of this picture as well, right?
Absolutely, and this is also quite a common threat, where the deepfake GA-generated documents can be injected in the identity stream. And the good news is that the liveness capabilities that we discussed in reference to faces, they exist for documents as well. And the capabilities that we're that I'm talking about are specific to address things like documents on the screen or screen replays. So basically, we can distinguish between an actual document and a picture of a document on the screen of the phone or your computer monitor. We can also distinguish between a document and the reprint of a document. So if somebody plays, gets the Photoshop and gets creative with the picture of a document that they might have, and then they print it on their printer, there are capabilities that can distinguish between the document and such reprint, and also capability that can distinguish between the document and the document where the picture was tampered with, in the way that gluing something on top of it, or some type, or or digitally manipulating that document. What especially encouraging is that these capabilities are universal, which means that typical IDV process or identity verification process is trained for specific documents. So majority of the engines and solutions that we see on the marketplace are trained for a very specific set of documents that they can identify, whereas liveness is universal and can be applied across all the documents and geographies and the and type of documents being in your passports, the driving license, and EE and so on. So, and similarly with injection attack, the detection, same type of analysis and capabilities can be attached to documents as well, as well as faces. So so documents, although calling it the liveness is a bit of a stretch, because it's not a live being in my hand here, but it's an object, but we can establish that it is in front of the camera versus the some type of attack. And one more area that gets a lot of publicity lately that we haven't touched upon is voice, right? So how can we get to make sure that this is the voice of a person versus AI generated voice? And we've heard a lot of the stories about how people were fooled by the quality of the AI generated voices that maybe asking them for something. And we have the similar capabilities for voice analysis, where we can distinguish between a human voice and the recording of a voice being played. So we can, and if you're using AI generated voice, you need to play it somehow. You need to present it into the microphone, and we have capabilities that can run these analysis and protect us from this type of attack. But what's interesting is that the weak link in this setup is the human being. So there are technologies that can distinguish between those things, but for human ear or for human eye, it's often quite a difficult task to make such a distinction. So we got to the point where technology actually exceeding the capabilities of a human to protect us from this type of attacks.
So again, the technology is out there, and it can be applied regardless of the situation, but you need to actually do it and set it up right.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you've got, if you're using this data, you've got to protect it, and it's got to be somewhere that you can reference it. So Francis, how would you characterize the way that generative AI has impacted data storage, identity data storage security?
So I think there's two aspects. One is again, back to the threats, is that because of these because of all the data breaches, now using generative AI to create like more fancy and more sophisticated phishing emails, it's becoming more and more easy to do. Then there is the aspect of, from a company, how much of my data do I feed into the generative GPT system? Because where is that going to be used and how is it going to be used? But I think altogether, if you look at all the different trends and forces and questions, also it's not about generative AI, but it definitely feeds into this subject, is all the privacy legislation and preventing and whatnot. So I think it's really forcing companies to really think about, back to the context of how they unify the user journey. How do you do that in a way that doesn't expose the enterprise to risks of generative AI, to risks of data breach and privacy and whatnot? And this is where those privacy enhancing technologies that I mentioned, particularly multi-party computing and zero knowledge proofs, I mentioned them because these are of course, the technologies that Anonybit uses. But the reason that we use those technologies is that we can handle both the storage and the processing of biometrics in a distributed manner. We can run both one-to-one as well as one-to-many lookups manner, and we can also handle the stuff that Alexei was talking about, documents and images and whatnot. So these frameworks give us the most scalable and the most robust and the most applicable across a variety of use cases, the capability to address those. And I think that the more and more data data is fueling our economy, data fuels everything that we do. It's really important to manage data. And I think generative AI is making people ask a lot of questions into where the data is stored, what data is being stored, who has access to the data, how do we make sure that we use it responsibly. And so I think we'll start to see a combination. We're seeing it already. The growing use of, I said it's kind of like table stakes already, the growing use of these privacy enhancing technologies combined with generative AI for good. It's not only bad, there is good too that has to be considered. But I think the privacy element and the data storage becomes now, like, the importance of that, grows exponentially.
Interesting, and maybe it grows in importance, and then maybe also becomes clearer to some enterprises, some businesses, what the threat has been all along, kind of thing too, right?
I think
I want to speed things along here so we can get to a couple of questions, because we're running very short on time. We're talking about a lot of what we're talking about boils down to the same kind of security arms race that is familiar to everyone in this space, right? So where I'd like to leave off before we get to a couple of quick questions is just the sort of bottom line. If my face or voice is spoofed, so assuming that it gets out there, can it be caught? Can this be detected? And do organizations have the opportunity to put in place the mechanisms that they need to protect it? Alexi?
So, Chris, first of all, it is out there. So it's not the question of whether it is out there. Anybody who's got the recording of this webinar, or anybody who's at this webinar, can take a picture of you right now, and there you go. So so too late for that. And anybody with a Facebook or LinkedIn or any other of the social media account, they have their face out there. Mm-hmm. So but it's not, but it doesn't mean that our security is compromised, because if the biometric authentication, if the identity management is done properly, the biometric key capability would be answering two questions. One, is this the right person, which means is this Chris or not? And secondly, is this a person? So is that an actual human being in front of the camera, microphone, or whatever that may be, or is it some type of representation or injection attack? And to Francis' point, and I think it's a very important one, it becomes increasingly apparent that we need to make sure that this right combination of technologies applied throughout the entire customer journey, not only in the beginning or not only in a particular point. And if they're implemented correctly, then we do have technologies, we do have key capabilities to protect the customers. So it is so I think it is it's important that that the enterprise and the government and all the participants in the market use the right tools, apply them correctly, and they can provide security to their users and customers without any negative effects to the user experience.
And Francis?
So for me, the bottom line is really around data protection and data storage, and combining that with the elements that Alexi mentioned. And I think that looking at the next generation threat there's quantum computing and what where does that take us, and start to combine. And I think, again, one of the reasons that we went with multi-party computation and zero knowledge proofs is that it is quantum resistant. It doesn't rely on one particular person or one particular entity holding all the keys. We could see what's going on with Microsoft now and all of that stuff, like just having access to a token. So we believe that we need to future-proof ourselves, and we need to future-proof ourselves now. And we've been able to do it through the system architecture and by combining different elements on the front end in order to make sure that not only is the data itself secure, but also the access to the data is also managed properly.
Very good. So, so the answer kind of boils down to a yes, but with a lot of caveats and some work to be done, I guess, is kind of how I'm hearing that. Fair assessment.
I put this in the category of, anybody who follows me on LinkedIn knows, I put this in the category of corporate social responsibility. We have the mechanism and we can do it. Just like the beverage manufacturers make commitments on use of water and plastics and improving the environment, entities that protect and manage and deal with personal data and identity should make a commitment. It's almost like we should make goals for this as well. And I'd welcome anybody to join me on this journey.
Absolutely. So I just want to run quickly through a few questions. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions. There are we've got a lot of great questions here, and we're simply not going to have time to get to them all. We're a little over time anyways, but let's hit a few really quickly on the way out. You mentioned the corporate responsibility aspect of this, Francis. We've got a great question here. What's the breakdown on awareness and protection in public sector versus private industry? We've got an attendee saying, you know, the public sector seems slower to create protection, but at greater risk. Do you have any thoughts about that, Francis?
So I think that it's a classic. I think that's definitely a perception, but I have to say, back in the day, I actually helped create a lot of these government identity systems, and the way that you look at, like the way you apply for a passport, use a passport, renew a passport is all pretty much a closed loop. And even though you know, not everybody has one, but there are elements that we can copy in the private sectors. I think it's not all bad. And from my own experience and my own interaction with some federal systems, not all, but some, I don't think that they're all that dissimilar from private sector. I think a lot of people think that compliance equals security, and as long as like you do like certain things, you're protected, but it's not the case. I think just like in the private sector, you have some entities that are more forward thinking and more advanced and more innovative. You also have some government agencies that are the same. And I think that this is actually a really important conversation. And I think the more people that are involved in this and learning from each other, both private and public sector, the better it will be for everyone, because we are all, at the end of the day, like we might all be identity professionals here, but we're also consumers and we're also citizens, and all of this affects us. And we have to remember that. Absolutely.
Whether we're trying to open a bank account or get government benefits or something. Yeah, absolutely. Another really good question here that I want to, I'll direct to you, Alexi. I'm just going to read it. It would seem that hidden liveness detection with encryption, both at the onboarding scan and whilst at rests, such as finger or palm vein, would be the obvious choice for mitigating the risk of bad actors using generative AI for fraudulent use. Yeah, what would you say about that perspective?
I think the general approach is that you want to use all of the tools that are available address this issue. There's no one silver bullet, one line of code that can solve this problem across all of the use cases, all of the environments, all the operating systems, web, mobile, and so on. So you do want to take advantage of the, or you want to take advantage of the biometrics. You want to take advantage of the liveness. You want to take advantage of the injection attack detection. You want to take advantage to the all of the technologies that can distinguish AI from non-AI generated images. You want to use all of the tools that are available and deploy them in a way that's customer friendly, that's UX friendly, and does not mean that the user experience becomes worse at this point, because that leads to a lot of other problems that we don't want to generate here. And we can do it. So our approach and our recommendation to the customers and partners that we work with: please make sure to use all of the tools that that you can see on the market, and it has to do with presentation attack detection, injections, data storage, data management. So so you cannot be kind of too complacent here. So I think it's a great idea to use all of those tools.
Fair enough. Very good. I think we'll hit one last question here before we wrap up. I really want to encourage all of you who asked questions that we didn't have time to get to today to reach out to, you can reach out to IDR&D. It's idrnd.ai. You can reach out to Anonybit. It's anonybit.io. Reach out to Francis and Alexi and their peers, and they can help answer a lot of these really interesting questions that we've got. But the one that I want to leave us with at the end here, I'll ask both of you: what is the one threat from deepfakes you think is most difficult to solve at the moment? Francis, what do you think?
So I think it's not about identifying the deepfake itself. I actually think that there are tools to do that. I think it's determining when a deepfake presents legitimate information, and then you have to step up. Making that determination, I think, is the most difficult aspect. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And actually, Alexi, I see that you're interacting with the Q&A as well there. So I'll let you, if you want to take a different question and get one last word in, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say that the last word piece. I think that what we're dealing with is the new attack vector that's emerging, that is developing. The attacks are getting better. We are seeing them in real life. It is a top of mind for a lot of practitioners in the identity world, and for good reason. But the good news is that we do have tools that can address this issue. We do have tools that can help customers, that can help the industry to address it and make sure that the developments of Gen AI or any other technological advancements are used for good. And if the history is any indication, majority of the technological advancements throughout the history were used mostly for good. The bad guys are typically trying to take advantage of them as well, but society and technology are typically find ways to address those threats. So I think we need to be vigilant. I think we need to take it seriously. I think we need to make sure that we make practical steps to address it. And if we do so, we're in a good place.
Very good. Well, I think we're going to have, as you say, a lot of interest going forward on this. And I want to thank everyone who stuck it out. It's not often that you get a webinar scheduled for an hour with with so many people hanging on after that hour has concluded. So I really want to thank everyone for joining us. Thanks for your great questions. Thank you, Francis, for your great answers and being involved in this discussion today. Alexi, thank you very much for providing your insight. And as everyone is demonstrating their interest, we've actually been talking about even having follow-up conversations on this topic as well. So we would like to encourage everyone to watch this space. This may be the first of multiple conversations along these lines and dealing with the broader issues that are involved. So thanks again to Francis. Thank you, Alexi. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you all soon. So until then, this is Chris Bird from Biometric Update, and have great days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.